right. My name is Dot Porter, and I am your host for Coffee with a Codex here. I am a curator in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books and Manuscripts in the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. I split my time with the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies, which is a research and development institute under the Kislak Center, and we look at manuscripts, we digitize manuscripts, we think about digitizing manuscripts. And once a week, they let me get on Zoom and spend 30 minutes showing you some of our manuscripts from our collection. So that's what we're doing today. Today, we're going to be looking at 3 manuscripts, which is a lot. So we'll see how this goes. But I wanted to show these 3 together because they have some overlapping texts between the 3 of them, and some of them look similar and some of them look different. And so it's sort of an interesting thing to look at. You may be here because you saw Rocket Cat. I first became aware of these books in 2013 when my colleague Mitch Frost went viral and he tweeted this image, which we will look at, of a cat that looks like it has a rocket pack attached to it. It is not a rocket pack. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. So these 3 books here, this is MS Codex 109. This is LJS 2, I gotta look at the number, 442, LJS 442, and MS Codex 129. All 3 of these are 16th century German treatises on munitions. And there are 2 texts that are present in these 3 books. The 2 texts are, I wrote them down, so I would have them, and I'll also put them in the chat so you can see too. One is Feuerwerkbuch, also known as the Firework Book, which is a text about saltpeter and gunpowder with a focus on siege warfare. So it's not so much about explosions as sort of getting stuff in there and getting into your city. And then the Buch von den probierten Kunsten, Book of Instruction. I don't think that's an exact translation, but it is a book of instruction for a cannon master. So what we're going to see are cannons, and we're going to see, yes, explosions, but fire. Mostly it's about fire. So we'll start with MS Codex 109, which is here. Well, no, before I do that, let me say, so these texts, the Firework Book is present in this manuscript 109 and in MS Codex 129. So the Firework Book is in these 2, and the Canon Master's book is in these 2. And this was a little bit of a mystery because I'll explain as I show you this one, which has both of the texts in here. And I am going to pull out my these to sort of help hold this up, and we'll get a little bit closer to, let's see. Go. I just wanted you to see all 3 of them together. So here we are, and it's in this sort of nice vellum or parchment, I guess, binding, sort of a soft binding. It has a stamp on the top. Let me see if we know what 109. What else do we know about the binding? It's the arms of Freiherr von Klamm. So we know whose arms these are. So presumably this is, he was an owner of that. There's no indication of when the binding was done, if it's an original binding or not. So it is German. The writing is sort of recognizably German. I mean, both the language and the script. Let's get a little bit closer here. There we go. So it starts out, and the date here is 1584. So sort of late late 16th century here. So the opening part, this is actually the firework book section of the book here, and it's very neatly written out, and you know the page has been ruled really nicely around the edges with like a frame rule. And I'm actually going to skip forward a little bit. I didn't mark. Let's see. I should have marked some more illustrations because there are some actually. Here we go. Here we go. It went viral, this book, because of the rocket cat, but it actually has a handful of these really great illustrations of just men just dressed really great, like 16th century, you know, dress. And they're holding, you know, he's got some kind of sword, I guess, behind him, and carrying some kind of weapon. But there's another one. Let's see if I can find it here with two of them, two guys together. Well, I'm gonna get to that. Let's see, oh, maybe I'll come back to it. So the first part is the fireworks workbook, and then we get to the second text, which is the book of the instruction for the canon master. And this is where, so it's mostly writing in the first part. It's sort of writing, you know, pages and pages of text. And then when we get to the second part, this is where we start seeing these illustrations. And if you look at this and then look at LJS 442, it's really clear that this was a text that had these sort of illustrations attached to it, and they were copied. So I'm going to take a second. I'm going to move this one. So think about this. You have this sort of long pipe, and then there's this balloon around it, which I assume is some kind of weapon that is going to explode. And then I'm going to, this is LJS 442. And it looks, here's the text. And again, it's 16th century German, so similar in aesthetic, although it lacks the sort of nice framing that the other one does. It's not quite as nice or as nicely done as the other one, and the art isn't quite as nice, but you can see here that this illustration is very, although they're switched, it's very similar to the other ones. You've sort of got this pipe with that on the end, and then you have this sort of, it looks like it's made of metal, but the sort of balloon in the center. And you'll find this sort of all the way through this particular section of the book. I won't look at all of them, but I do want to go back and forth a little bit. So we've got these sort of three explosive balls, and you can see it looks like there's materials inside them, right? So when it explodes, it will set out nails or whatever these are. And then if I go back to here, so we started here. And come on, I did check. I think the writing in this one might be a bit larger. There we go. So here we have our metal balls with and you can see again the materials inside, 1/2, 4, 1. So it's the same illustration sort of copied over and over. Although this one, MS Codex 109, is clearly sort of, you would say that it's a finer manuscript there. And so here we have the cross, and you would use this, I think, to throw the fire. This might be something that you would poke fire into something. And this is, it looks like a beer mug to me with fire in it, which I'm not exactly sure. I am, by the way, I am not a munitions expert. I am a manuscript scholar. I just like to look at these and do the comparison, because I think it's pretty interesting. So if we come back here, And here we go. So again, we have this throw the fire, this sort of thing. This looks maybe less like a beer thing, but still like a holder, and then something that maybe you would poke. The second one that I have marked, I'll go ahead and go there, because this is the one that people get to seem to get sort of excited about, and it's what we call, or what has been called, rocket cat, and then Molotov bird is the hashtag I have seen attached to the bird. So you have a cat that I'll show you the other illustration too. It looks more like a rocket. It's not a rocket. It is Heidi, oh no, Elizabeth, flask of boiling oil. That's basically what it is. So if you go to Mitch, the blog post that Mitch Frost wrote, I will copy again the link here. That is, it's basically has oil on a, the German text is in there, but it's basically take the oil and put it on a cloth and then attach that somehow to the animal. And the idea is that you have a cat that lives in the city that's under siege. And so you attach it and light it on fire. And when the cat goes back into the city and goes home, they will light their home on fire. And the same with the birds, right? You attach the birds, and they do. And I've been sort of poking around to see if this was something that was actually done. And there doesn't, it seems to be unclear, or it's unclear to me, because it does appear in other historical records, but also historical records, especially very old historical records. It's like, did it actually happen, or was it people writing later? And it does seem to be related to a biblical quote that I have, of course, forgotten. But there's actually something in the Bible about attaching, fire to animals and sending them in. So whether this is actually something that people did or not, I am not certain of. But it looks neat, and it's interesting to think about. And it is interesting that it appears within the context of a document that does seem to be a practical text. So the other illustrations here, the ones that we looked at earlier, and if we go back, there'll be more. This is another one that appears in the previous one we have. And here, so here's a man on a horse, and he has this thing that we sort of looked at earlier, where he could be throwing the fire into somewhere. But it is, again, it's not like something that the artist made up. It is an illustration that, let's see, this, because this one, again, this is really nice. Here we go. Our nicely dressed fellow with his fire there. And just speaking about the practicality of it, it does seem to be a practical, text, like here is how you build these and here is how you do them. Let's see. So I do want to show you this rocket cat, just because this is the one that kind of made us famous, I guess. And there we go. So this is 109, MS Codex 109, LJS 442. I'm going to switch now and take a look at, we can come back to this and look at more of these sort of really nice photos here, but I want to take a quick look at this other manuscript. And this again is MS Codex 129. And so this one is only a copy of the firework book. So the one that we were just looking at, that wasn't actually the firework book. That was the canon one. So this is a copy of the firework book. And it is illustrated, but you're going to see immediately that the illustrations are very different from the ones that we were looking at, which of course were in this other section. These, the 442 and 109 don't really have illustrations in the firework book section, but this one does, not immediately. So again, 16th century German. This one is even, let's see, I'm trying to think of a nice word. It's not as nice as 442, LJS 442, which had, at least had margins. This doesn't have any ruling. It doesn't have the nice marginal rule or the frame rule. Or any kind of ruling, and the handwriting isn't quite as nice. The paper isn't as nice, it's smaller, the binding isn't as nice, all of these things. But if we come here, first, there are these illustrations which appear to be, well, I don't honestly know, I'm not entirely sure what these are. Oh, Adrian, Judges 15, 4-8. Samson used oil-soaked rags on foxes' tails and set the fields of the Philistines on fire. Thank you. That's exactly the one that I was thinking of. So we have these, which I assume that they're diagrams of weapons of some sort to start. And then we get to this section here, which is cannons. And I want to point out that this, to me, to my eye, seems a lot more practical than the other one, because we have a kind of realistic. So the other one sort of had these drawings. I'm sure they look realistic, but in this case, not only do we have the drawing, but then we have these this little section under here, which seems to be outlining sort of more information about how you would do this practically. So again, I haven't read this. I think that this is what it looks like is happening here. So this is actually practical guidelines for building these, and then there's several of them. So, and they're different sizes. So let's see, might have a slightly larger one or a slightly smaller one. And this is sort of practical. Here's a big one. I think this might be, now that I'm looking at that, there's a circle there. These are cannons. So the cannonball, what size cannonball could this shoot? I think that might be what's happening here. By the way, if anyone watching this knows more than me, please feel free to share your knowledge, because I don't really know. So this is this says 5 pounds. The one before, I think it said 2.5 pounds. So if you want to shoot different sizes of 40 pounds, if you want to shoot different sizes of these cannonballs, you're going to have a big enough cannon to shoot your big cannonball. So I thought this was really interesting. And then there's more of these, more like diagrams, not showing what it looks like, but maybe showing how it works in a more less realistic and sort of more diagramish sort of way. And then we have more tables that, again, seem to be sort of practical guides to the canons that we were just looking at. So a very different sort of approach to the same thing, like let's build cannons. Okay, on one hand, we can read about it and look at these realistic sort of pictures. And then in this case, I think it's more sort of practical guidance. So let's go, let's see, I'm just taking a quick look at the chat again. So yeah, John Tibble, interesting that the illustrations in the two books seem to be very similar, except that the cities in the two are completely different. I didn't, you know what, I didn't notice that. So let's take a look at that because I think that is interesting. Let's see. I don't think yeah, so here is the city in this one. I wonder if if it's a real city, like if you knew the city, if you could sort of recognize the skyline. I don't know, but it's on a hill. It looks like there's maybe a lake there. There's a wall, of course, and it's sort of made of, perhaps it's made of brick or some kind of red clay. It looks much more red, I think, on my in the picture. So, all right, so let's see what the other one looks like. I'm curious now. And I'm a little embarrassed to say that I didn't notice that, but that's all right. Let's see. So there's those bolts. Here we go. Oh my gosh. Look at that. That looks almost, I don't know. I want to say it looks Italian, but I don't know if that's true. But it does look very different. The round windows are very interesting. And the towers, these towers in the back, I'm not sure what. I think it might just be that he's not very artistic, perhaps. Great. All right. So we still have several minutes to go. Let's see. I'm gonna page through here while actually what I want to do is I want to go back to this one and find those nicely dressed gentlemen again, because they really look nice. Let's see. Heidi Wilson, if it was copied for a sovereign, the copyist might have substituted his city for the original. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is what's happening, even if it wasn't sort of copied for a sovereign. The artist just might have replaced his own city, replaced whatever he was copying with his own city, or I mean, who knows? Like these two manuscripts weren't copied from each other. You know, there were other copies. This was a pretty popular manuscript. So I think there are over 60 copies of this that survive. So there could be, you know, a lot of copying. And that's sort of one thing that's interesting to keep in mind when you're looking at manuscripts that are copies of the same text. You know, they were being copied from each other, and maybe several manuscripts would be copied from the same one. And so a big part of the study of I think it's called textual transmission is sort of, or manuscript transmission is sort of tracing back to see which copies were copied from other copies and tracing it back to sort of the or text or the original text. I like this, and it is recognizably, like the writing is so German. Let me see, where are these guys? I knew that I made a mistake by not. And this is very nice, by the way. This is made of paper. All of these are paper. This is quite late. Well, we looked at him, found him. I thought there was one where there were two of them. And this is really nice paper. I think we're, come on. Oh, so Bran is saying he thinks those towers are actually something like juniper trees. Quite possibly. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to look in the record and see, because I don't like it when I can't find what I want to find. 2 men, 68. So it looks like 68 recto. 62. There they are. There they are. This is who I've been looking for. These two And they have very impressive beards too. They have beards and they have clothing. They're, oh my, here we go. I'll just hold it down. And the colors are great. Oh, that was unexpected. There we go. No, come on. Come on. Why are you doing that? Why have you done that? There we go. All right. And their colors are great. I like this. I like this a lot. The green and the blue, or the, not the green, the blue and the red. Let's see. Are the borders wide to allow commentary, or were they planning to decorate them? I think in this, usually if there are wide borders like this, I would say that it's because they were expecting people to make notes in the margin. And that may be, although clearly no one has done that. I think that's more likely than decoration. So it could just be an aesthetic choice that they thought it looked nice with wider margins, and it also does, of course, leave. I don't think there are marginal notes in either of these. I certainly didn't see it when I was going through. So that is probably that. Let's see. We have another minute, so I'm just gonna show some more of these great illustrations of these weapons here. And you can see it's all the text is divided into sections. So each section will sort of describe what is being built, and then, oh, come on. When I was looking at this earlier, it felt like there were a lot more illustrations. There we go. Barrels. So we have barrels, and again, the other one doesn't have much. So here's another one. Cheryl is asking about signs of use. It doesn't have a lot of signs of use. It doesn't look like it was particularly used to used at all. Like there aren't notes or even really dirt around the edges or anything. This is one that I particularly liked. It looks like logs with metal wrapped around them. I guess you would sort of push it. I don't know what you would do, actually. I don't know, but they look really interesting. Some kind of fire wheel. And again, this is also illustrated in the other one. So, and that one, here we go. Here's some more illustrations with the fire. But again, think about the other copy of the firework book, just not maybe practical. So something neat to look at and read, but maybe not. Maybe they didn't really think people would be making weapons from this book. I don't know. I'd like to know more. It is 12:31, so so I will let you go. I will go ahead and drop the links one more time in case you want to go back and look at these, or if you want to register for upcoming Coffee with a Codex. I will not be here next week, but this was really fun, and it was a great excuse for me to bring these out because they're really pretty fun to look at. So thank you so much, and I will hopefully see you again soon.